Today, I'll be explaining three interconnected pieces of California's governmental and public safety landscape. First, I'll describe what the California Legislature is and how it functions. Then I'll move into how this legislative body relates to and regulates the Department of Motor Vehicles, better known as the DMV. Finally, I'll explain how the DMV's policies and administrative responsibilities can directly and indirectly influence DUI statistics in our state. Together, these components illustrate a complex chain of governance, policy, and public behavior that shapes road safety for millions of Californians. To begin, the California Legislature is the state's lawmaking branch of government. It is a bicameral body, meaning it has two houses, the State Assembly and the State Senate. Together, these two chambers create, debate, amend, and pass state laws that govern everything from criminal sentencing to environmental regulations, transportation policy, education funding, and importantly, for today's topic, motor vehicle and DUI-related laws. The legislature operates on a system of representative democracy. Members of the Assembly serve 2-year terms, while state senators serve 4-year terms. Their central responsibility is to translate public needs and policy priorities into enforceable statutes. Whether the topic is the appropriate blood alcohol limit for driving, the penalty structure for repeat DUI offenders, or the rules for issuing driver's licenses, the legislature is the entity that ultimately decides what the law will be. Beyond passing laws, the legislature also performs oversight of executive agencies, meaning it monitors how state departments carry out and enforce the rules that have been enacted. This includes reviewing budgets, requesting reports, holding hearings, and evaluating whether agencies are effective and accountable in fulfilling their missions. In short, the California Legislature is the engine that drives statewide policy. When we consider how DUI laws are crafted or how driver behavior is monitored, the legislature is the starting point, the original source that authorizes every rule, program, or penalty that comes after. Now let's transition to the DMV. The California DMV is an executive branch agency responsible for administering driver's licensing, vehicle registration, identification cards, driving record maintenance, and various safety-related programs. But the DMV does not create laws on its own. Instead, its entire structure, authority, and day-to-day operations are defined by the legislature. There are several important ways the legislature regulates the DMV. Number one is through statutory authority. The DMV functions because the legislature has passed laws, found primarily in the California Vehicle Code, that grants the DMV its powers. These statutes dictate everything from the rules for issuing or suspending licenses to the documentation required to register a vehicle. Without legislative authorization, the DMV cannot enforce any policy. Each year, let me backpedal a little bit. Number two is budget and funding oversight. Each year, the DMV must submit its proposed budget to the legislature. Lawmakers have the authority to approve, modify, or deny funding. This financial oversight influences how effectively the DMV can implement safety programs, modernize technology, or improve data tracking related to DUI cases. Number three is through regulatory rulemaking. While lawmakers create the statutes, they often direct the DMV to develop more detailed regulations. These regulations spell out how policies will be carried out in practice. For example, specifying the procedures for mandatory license suspension after a DUI arrest. Legislative committees review these regulations to ensure that the DMV's implementation aligns with legislative intent. And number four is through policy hearings and accountability. The legislature frequently holds hearings to evaluate DMV performance, including technology failures, long processing times, or issues related to licensing and safety monitoring. In the context of DUIs, lawmakers might question how quickly the DMV processes administrative suspensions, how effectively it tracks repeat offenders, or whether its data systems accurately capture alcohol-related violations. In this way, the legislature sets the direction, rules, funding, and oversight that shape how the DMV operates. The DMV becomes the operational arm that enforces the rules the legislature puts on the books, and because the DMV interfaces directly with every licensed driver, it becomes a crucial partner in carrying out the state's public safety goals. This brings us to the final section. How the DMV's actions and administrative framework can affect DUI statistics in California. Many people think of DUI enforcement as purely the responsibility of police departments or the criminal courts, but the DMV plays an equally consequential role, often influencing DUI statistics in ways that don't get as much public attention. There are several key mechanisms through which the DMV can shape DUI-related outcomes. One of the most direct ways the DMV impacts DUI statistics is through administrative per se suspensions, sometimes called on-the-spot suspensions. When a driver is arrested for DUI, either for refusing a breath test or for testing above the legal limit, the DMV has the authority to immediately suspend that driver's license independent of the criminal court process. This immediate consequence can reduce DUI rates in several ways. It removes potentially dangerous drivers from the road long before a criminal trial concludes. The certainty and swiftness of the punishment can deter people from driving under the influence in the first place. Research in many states shows that administrative suspensions correlate with reductions in alcohol-related fatalities over time. Because the DMV manages these suspensions, the speed and consistency with which it processes them can directly influence DUI recidivism and overall crash statistics. After a DUI arrest or conviction, drivers often must complete treatment or education programs to reinstate their license. The DMV oversees enrollment, compliance, and completion. If the DMV rigorously enforces these requirements, ensuring that people actually attend classes, finish treatment, or meet probation conditions, it can reduce repeat offenses. If, on the other hand, oversight is weak or inconsistent, higher recidivism may occur, and DUI statistics may rise accordingly. The DMV maintains one of the state's most important data sets on driver behavior. It tracks crashes, convictions, suspensions, ignition interlock usage, and prior offenses. The accuracy and quality of this data affect DUI statistics in two big ways. First, it determines how the state counts and interprets DUI trends. Secondly, policymakers rely on this data when deciding whether to strengthen penalties, expand ignition interlock requirements, or change enforcement strategies. If the DMV improves its data systems and produces more accurate reporting, the legislature can craft more effective DUI prevention laws, which then influence real-world DUI trends. California requires ignition interlock devices for many DUI offenders. The DMV manages the licensing, compliance, verification, and reinstatement process. Strong monitoring ensures that individuals who are required to use these devices actually do so, which directly reduces impaired driving incidents. Better enforcement equals fewer alcohol-related crashes. Poor enforcement would create the opposite effect. The DMV also influences DUI statistics through the information it provides to millions of drivers every year. Safety campaigns, renewal reminders, handbook updates, and exam questions all help shape how drivers understand DUI risks and penalties. While this influence is more indirect, educational efforts can meaningfully alter long-term behavior, especially for young or first-time drivers. Finally, the speed at which the DMV processes actions, license reinstatements, suspension hearings, record updates, and compliance checks affects DUI statistics. Efficient processing can maintain safety by ensuring that high-risk drivers are not left on the road due to bureaucratic delays. Conversely, slow processing may allow suspended or non-compliant individuals to continue driving when they legally should not. In short, the DMV's administrative machinery is deeply intertwined with public safety outcomes. According to Robert Lewis and Lauren Hepler at Cal Matters, nearly 40,000 people have died and more than 2 million have been injured on California roads over the past decade. This has frequently been caused by repeat drunk drivers and drivers with well-recorded histories of recklessness behind the wheel. Year after year, all levels of California government, all levels, have chosen to do nothing about this issue. This is a complete abdication of their duties to the people of California. Recently, a state bill this last fall that was intended to strengthen DUI consequences was gutted. The state DMV, which is under the governor's authority, has the power to reverse this trend and take dangerous drivers off the road. Steve Gordon, who runs the state agency, refuses to speak about this issue. Consider the gruesome and horrific cases that take place in our state. Colin Campbell's life was completely changed on one night in 2019. A repeat drunk driver slammed into his Prius while he was on his way to his family's new home in Joshua Tree, tragically killing his 17-year-old daughter and 14-year-old son. The consequences that arise from our state's government's failure to act are monumental, tragic, and utterly life-changing. We need to institute common sense policies that other states are already utilizing, like requiring in-car breathalyzers. We must discontinue neglecting public safety for bureaucracy. Once these laws are passed, judges should be required to implement these penalties and not have any discretion on the matter. Mothers lose their children, and children lose their mothers. We must act. To conclude, the California Legislature is the state's lawmaking body responsible for shaping the full legal and regulatory framework behind DUI enforcement and driver safety. It grants the DMV its authority, oversees its funding, and sets the rules that guide its work. The DMV in turn becomes the frontline administrator of those laws, issuing licenses, tracking driver history, enforcing suspensions, overseeing treatment and ignition interlock programs, and maintaining the data that policymakers depend on. Through these administrative powers, the DMV meaningfully shapes DUI statistics in California. Its efficiency, rigor, and follow-through can determine how quickly unsafe drivers are removed from the road, how effectively repeat offenders are monitored, and how accurately statewide DUI trends are measured. Together, the legislature and the DMV form a policy ecosystem where laws enforcement and public behavior interact. Understanding this relationship helps explain not only how our DUI laws work, but also why they sometimes succeed or fail, mostly fail, in reducing alcohol-related harm on California's roads. Thank you.